Well, we continue our journey today, our March journey, which is all about the art of quantum living. And so that's the title of the workshop and the process that I will be doing at the end of March. And what that is, it's an integrative cognitive shadow work practice that weaves together the latest research emerging from neurobiology, developmental psychology, family systems theory, quantum science, and perennial spiritual wisdom to offer a powerful path to spiritual evolution. And so by resolving the root issues under limiting beliefs and behaviors, you can experience transformation and have deep and lasting change in a short period of time. When I was going through ministerial school, I took a class in this, just like I'll be offering on the 30th, and it changed my life. And I was so empowered by it. I was so gifted by it and blessed that I decided I wanted to become certified. And so I've been certified for a number of years now. And I too have been waiting 2.5 years with this as well to offer it in this community. So I'm really excited to be able to do that. It's quantum. When we call it quantum, it's because it is describing the behavior of energy and matter at the smallest scales of our physical reality. It's about really becoming aware, having the knowingness that there is a physical reality, there's underneath what we think, that there's more happening in the beyond, around us, within us, between us, than we actually consciously can fully grasp. It's about understanding that we are interconnected, that the universe is interconnected at all times. And in order to live in this quantum reality and to heal into the quantum reality, we have to shift our perspective, shift what we think we know is true. And as we do that, we shift the way we look at life, and we shift the way we look at ourselves, and we shift the way we look at the world, and our reality and our possibilities shift. Last week we began our journey honoring the sacred feminine, as this month is International Women's Day, March 8th, month, and March 8th was International Women's Day. And so we talked about that shifting the way we look at what this thing, this energy, the divine feminine is, and how we must engage it and inhabit it in order to really be in our full spiritual selves. And so I invited you all to unleash your inner goddess. Have you been working on that this week? You better say yes. So today we move on in our journey to talk about the power of sacred anger. Now, anger has gotten a bad rap in our culture. Normally, when we think of anger, we think of negativity, we think of violence. But when we scale that all back, anger really is just an emotion. It's an emotion like fear, or joy, or shame, or gratitude. If we look at the etymology of the word anger, that means the origin, the root, the base of where this word comes from. It comes from the Proto-Indo-European word ankh, meaning tight and constricted. So when we think about anger, it's this thing that is holding us back, that is constricting us, that we're not free, that we're holding, right? It's something that needs to be understood, to be released, so that we can be fully in ourselves. Anger really is a natural reaction. We think of it as something wrong, or that we're trying to suppress, or we're trying to curtail, but anger in and of itself is really a healthy reaction to healthy boundaries. So putting up your healthy boundaries, saying no. So when you put your hand in a stove, right, it hurts. You're going to pull it away if you're in the flame. It's the same thing with anger. When you're in a situation that your boundaries are being transgressed, in a situation where you're being hurt, in a situation where you're being wronged, in a situation that you see that it is not for your greatest and highest good, no, you take your hand out of the stove. That is anger. But unfortunately, what has happened over time is we've literally lost the ability to be able to set those boundaries and allow anger to guide us, to tell us what is not for our greatest and highest good. So we have to learn how to re-understand it, have that new vision of what anger is. Because when we don't understand anger, when we don't understand the gift that anger is giving us, when we don't process or transform anger, that is when you see the negative consequences or the negative outpicturings. So what happens when that happens? We're looking at anger being involved in shaming and blaming and othering and fear and destruction and, yes, violence. Two forms of unprocessed anger are external and internal. When I say external, it's just what I said. We don't process the anger. We don't really want to feel the anger. So instead, we project it out there on others. We rage against others in a really toxic way. Maybe the anger is in the form of judgment or criticism. Maybe the anger is in the form of verbal assault. Anybody ever been on that other end? Anybody been the person on that end giving it out, yeah? All of us have been in that sense in one way or another, where we're externalizing or we don't want to feel really what's going on. We don't want to understand, and so we're trying to just get it out and push it off on someone else. The other one, which I think is in so many ways more insidious, is the internal, the way we internalize anger. So we shut down. We become fearful of people's anger. We become fearful of our own anger. And so we turn it inward. We deny it. Nope, I'm not angry. Nope, I'm not angry. And so we take it on ourselves. Oftentimes, then we get into a situation where we're in trauma response around the anger, where we shut down and sometimes we withdraw. Sometimes we have other symptoms. Sometimes we have even physical symptoms. We begin maybe to people please. I don't want you to be angry. And it's about me. What did I do wrong? How can I make this right? So many things are involved in this when we're not processing our anger. Today, I want to suggest to you a different way to understand it, and that is through this concept of sacred anger. Sacred anger is when you're turning inward, but you're turning inward into your greatest and highest self. You're going within to connect to source and allow it to reveal to you what is this anger about. What is it trying to tell you? What is your journey in relationship to this anger? Oftentimes, right, when you get in a situation, you get in a tiff with somebody, a coworker, a family member, a spouse, a child, someone at the grocery store. We're in anger that we're being triggered by. Especially if it's something that is like egregious, something that is really out there, right? That is really hurtful and painful that someone has done to you. And I think most of us, what we do is sort of the go-to as a human being is, why did they do that to me? Why did they do that to me? I was good to them. I treated them well. I didn't deserve this. Why did this do this to me? Yes? Yeah? Don't we do that? Eric Butterworth, as y'all know, is my mentor, my minister mentor from the grave. And he looked at this issue. Why do we do that? Why did they do this to me? And he says, the to me in that, he says, is a fish hook. Because we're hooking ourselves into a situation where it's deadly. It's not going to end well. It's not really allowing us to understand what's happening. Instead, he says, take off the to me and say, why did that happen? Or why did he or she say that, not to me? And it allows us to take a moment of reflection. It allows us to make it not personal. Anybody read like the book, Don Ruiz, The Four Agreements? That's one of the four agreements. Don't make it personal. We step into the trigger. We step into the interaction that is toxic instead of stepping back and saying, okay, why did this person do this? And we become curious. It doesn't take away maybe that person wronged you in some way, but it allows you not to be in the same energetic vibration with that person. It allows you that sacred pause to say, okay, why could this person do it? Oh, maybe they're in fear, or maybe they're being triggered by something else, or maybe they just came from losing their job, or maybe they just came from the doctor and they got a diagnosis. It doesn't mean that we have to sit there and excuse them or really go deep, but it's just taking that moment of reflection and saying, wow, what's going on with them? What's happening in their lives that are making them, allowing themselves to engage in this way that is so harmful to others and to themselves? And what he says is then, what you do is you make it about you. This is when we're in interactions with people, Holy Spirit is giving us an opportunity to heal something. It doesn't seem like it in the moment, right? When we're like in a challenge or when we're hurting or suffering or what have you, but it is really this opening that Spirit is giving you to heal something in your life. So he says, instead of saying, why did they do that? Why did they say that? Make it about you and say, why am I disturbed by it? What about this is disturbing me? What does this remind me of? Is there something in my past? Some people be like, ooh, I went there because it reminded me of my mother. Anybody been there? Or it reminded me of my father. Or it reminded me of my ex. Yeah? Sometimes we have to really take again that sacred pause for ourselves to say, why is this bothering me? Eric Butterworth says this. So then turn away from the why did he do it to me and put emphasis upon why am I disturbed? Why did I let the to me hang me up? Why can't I forget and walk on? If you press the issue and really search yourself, you'll find that there are a lot of interesting things about yourself that you didn't know. This seeming negative emotion and negative action caused you to upset are basically revealing something in yourself you need to understand about yourself. Now, this isn't easy. This takes practice. This isn't a one and done situation. It takes practice to really be able to have the skill set to engage in this way. But this is what we're all moving towards. If we really want to embody spirit, if we really want to be in a higher vibration where we're living in joy, where nothing and no one is against us, it takes courage. It takes attention. Like, we have to be in that quick. Okay, this is happening. You have to react in that way, like step back. And it requires intention. Okay, this person is anger, or I'm in anger. Let me step back. I'm intentionally trying to understand what Spirit is calling me to in this moment. Do y'all understand? We have to be intentional about the work that we do if we really want to heal. It's about boldly being in and with your anger. Most of us lead busy lives. We lead lives that we're constantly moving to and fro. We're constantly in another task and another project, never to finish. But why is that the state of humanity today? Because we can't sit with ourselves. We can't sit with the truth of what is happening to us. We cannot sit with what has happened to us. So we keep moving to forget. We keep moving to not remember. We keep moving not to feel that anger about what has been done to us, to our world, to our families. We keep moving. It takes boldness. But if you allow anger, if you allow her to be your sacred teacher, your life will change. Myrtle Fillmore, our co-founder of Unity, in her book, How to Let God Help You. If you've never read it, if you don't have it, you're missing out. This is truly one of my favorite New Thought books because it's such a great how-to. This is like her blueprint of how she healed her life. If you remember the story, she had all these illnesses. She was told that she wouldn't have long to live, and she went to this lecture, and somebody told her, you can heal yourself, and something resonated deep in her soul, and she said, you know what, this makes sense to me. I felt that when he said that. You know what, this is true for me. I can do this. And so she spent 2 years with the attentional and intentional practice to heal herself, and guess what? She healed herself, and she helped launch an international movement. But what does she say that happened? Sometimes we're working the steps, we're working the affirmations, we're working the prayers, we're working the meditations, and we don't see movement. Or maybe we see it for a time and then it sort of stops. She addresses this in here, and she says sometimes what it is this internalized emotion, this subconscious or unconscious emotion that we need to deal with. And some of that is internalized anger. Here's what she says. So she's talking in this moment about why healing wasn't coming fast enough for her. And she said, the Spirit said to me, you have looked among your faults, now look among your virtues. I thought that's strange, but soon it came to me that I had tried to keep my feelings to myself, taking great pride in the fact that I never let anyone just know how I felt when anything displeased me or hurt me. I found that I did not feel as sweet and poised on the inside as I seemed outwardly. I began to watch and redeem this state of mind. I determined to handle all that came to me before I swallowed it and allowed it to irritate, cut, and weaken my nerves and organs. As I gained real poise and the ability to keep my thoughts and feelings truly free, I was healed and restored to strength and normal functioning. What is she saying here? She's saying sometimes we're looking at the things that are obvious that we're doing quote unquote wrong. Okay, I'm addicted. I'm doing these things that are not healthy for me. All of these faults. But what about the things that we're praised for sometimes? What about the things that we praise ourselves for sometimes? The things that make life easier for others, but maybe not for ourselves at its core. She talks about being, poised, right? Imagine her being right at the Myrtle Fillmore, like, very poised and together. But inside, there was that part of her that was falling apart. That part of her that was angry and resentful. That part of her that had to acknowledge that these emotions existed in her if she was to heal herself. She didn't allow it to swallow it. Taking that in, allowing it to fester as a wound in her body that creates sickness. So we learn how to make these things come out so that we're not letting them live and keep real estate in our bodies. We are moving this to action. We are creating momentum so that the life energies that we have within us work together so that we create equilibrium again. We create that harmony again in our bodies, in our lives. What she's talking about, though we don't see it in those terms, she's talking in the early 1900s, but now we have different language for that. In many ways, she's talking about trauma and trauma response. I found a really great quote about trauma, how to describe it, that I really liked by a blogger named Raquel Dubois. And she says, by trauma, I mean the thousands of micro moments in my life where I overrode my impulse to protect myself, sometimes needing to fight or flee, but other times needing distance or differentiation from others. By working so quickly and not in a way that was attuned to the sensitivity of my nervous system, I skated right over my frozen and stuck survival responses. I sought to be rewarded for overriding my ability to be present to my feelings and emotions. She's saying the same thing, Myrtle said. So I'm going to just pretend like that didn't happen. I'm going to just stuff it down. I'm going to forget it. I'm going to just act like it's okay and just be like, whatever, and write it off. Not have that response that I'm talking about that is natural to be angry, to have an emotion around something when you feel you are wronged, and then instead wanting to be rewarded like, she's so calm. She's so forgiving. He's so really wonderful because he just takes it all. Anybody resonate with that one? But what happens? The emotions become trapped in our body. They become trapped in our consciousness. They become trapped in our cellular memory. And so then how do we allow them to release? When they're lodged in our body tissues, in our organs, in our glands, when they come even not from this lifetime, when they come from our ancestral lineage, that they're so much a part of us that we don't even understand that they are. We don't even know why we have these feelings and reactions. It is all recorded in the unconscious and subconscious mind. This is the quantum reality. And that's just what's happened to us personally, maybe when we're looking at these interactions on a personal level, the micro interactions. But what about the macro interactions, where anger is coming from a place of things that are occurring or have happened or continue to happen in structures or institutions? Dr. Lisa Rankin, who was a OBGYN doctor turned New York Times bestselling author of a book called Mind Over Medicine and 6 other books. She's a very well-known person in this field of alternate healing, of perennial wisdom, all of this. And she talks about, I don't have time to go through the whole quote, but it's a beautiful quote where she's basically talking about how our anger mechanisms have become disabled because of all the trauma that we've had in our life, where we've been broken down, where we've been told by religious institutions and other types of institutions to turn the other cheek. That is not what Jesus meant. Jesus didn't mean to turn the other cheek and be a doormat. He meant to turn the other cheek to understand and go higher into consciousness. When we turn, we're turning our sight, we're turning our vision, we're turning our way to understand in a different way. That's what he meant. But some of us didn't have that growing up, when we had a rageaholic mother or a mentally ill father or any of this. So we learned to be small, or we learned to play too big and rage out so that we didn't have, again, to deal with what was really happening. The abuse, the rape, the bullying, all of the things in our lives that have taught us to go inward and not understand that we should be mad, that it is okay to be mad, and dare I say, you must be mad if you are ready to heal. Does anyone hear me in the room? This doesn't mean to get addicted to your anger. It doesn't mean that we're calling people out in a toxic way, in a hurtful way, in a mean way. That's not what I mean by allowing for anger. Because if we do that, all we are doing is reifying the systems that we supposedly want to undermine, that we're not happy with, that are hurting us. We're not talking about that. Overindulging in our feelings of righteous indignation, like they did me wrong and da-da-da, that's not what I'm talking about. Casting ourselves as superior then. Talking about how we move into feeling our anger. So I'm going to give you very quickly a process that is similar to what I do with the Q process. The first thing is really just connect to your anger. Some of us have no idea, and I was one of those people when people say, "Are you angry about that?" No. Are you angry? No, I'm good about it. And meanwhile, underneath, I was just seeming, and I didn't know it. So connect to the feelings, connect to that anger, allow that anger to be your guide. Be honest that it is there. And then ask, what messages does the anger want to give you? What are the limiting beliefs around the anger that you have? Like, well, I have fear and anxiety. That's what it is. Or the anger is making me feel, or the situation that I'm angry about makes me feel like I'm lacking, like I'm not enough, like there's some kind of not enoughness in my life. Maybe there's an inadequacy, maybe there's an unworthiness, maybe there's a powerlessness, maybe there's a lack of safety. What is underneath? We have to get underneath those anger feelings to truly understand them. And then, really important, people, to have compassion for yourself and for others in this. This is not easy work. If it was, everybody would be walking on water like Jesus. It's not easy work. And so sometimes when we do the work, we tend to beat ourselves up like, I should have known better, or why did I allow this to happen for so many years, or gosh, I should have done this sooner, I could have avoided X, Y, Z. The idea is have compassion for yourself. Like, it took whatever time. It happened, it happened. You did it, oh well. Not that, oh well, but you're just allowing yourself to just be okay with you in this moment. And then we move. You have to transform the anger. If it's resting in your consciousness, in your body, it has to release. You have to start moving it, and literally by moving your body. Things like dancing or cycling or running or painting or writing or poetry or singing, like, karaoke, singing in the shower till you're blue in the face. Whatever that is, but again, with intention. I'm working my anger, and this is what I'm going to do. I'm wanting to release my anger, so here's how I'm moving my body. Maybe you scream into a pillow. Anybody done that? Allow yourself to ugly cry in your car, not caring who's watching you, right? Like, ooh, what's going on with her today? Punching the couch. Maybe you go into ritual around this, a fire ceremony, a water ceremony, some kind of release, ritual bath even. Again, we forget that it doesn't have to be these grandiose gestures. It's about having your mind linked to the action that gives it the power, not exactly always what's being done. Visualization. And the last part in this is when you do these things, what you're doing is you're creating a new story. You're acknowledging that I have this anger. I went through this thing that caused me anger. I went through this thing that is causing me now anger. But I am creating a new story. I'm transforming it for my liberation. I am transforming it for my freedom. I am transforming it so that I can move from feeling helpless to feeling powerful beyond belief. Changing the story. Jesus was about changing the story. Jesus was about when he went into the temple with the money changers, and he went and he threw over the tables, right? Do you remember? And he had the whip, and he's whipping, the folks out because he was so upset that this was happening in this house of worship, that they were doing these things with selling these animals and doing that at unfair prices and all of these things. We don't have time to get into that scripture. But the idea is he was upset because there was an exclusion that was happening, that it was becoming a way to exclude people from being able to worship freely in the house of God. And so other people have used this scripture not to include people, but to exclude people. To say, well, we're going to follow Jesus' example, like getting these people out because they're not worthy. That's not what Jesus' message was. It was about inclusion. Any movement of liberation, like Jesus reminded us, because that was a movement of liberation that he was opening up. Liberation of the mind, liberation of the spirit, liberation of the soul. He was calling it forward, but it begins with sacred anger, where Jesus said, not enough, not in my house, not in God's house. We don't do this. It is not okay. It begins with that anger to change, to heal, to say no to toxic behaviors and systems that don't serve us and don't serve God, because they're not about love. They're not about joy. They're not about equality. And that's how we have so many of the women that we saw in Colleen's song, the visuals, the women who dared to get angry and said, not enough. Jane Addams, Sojourner Truth, Harriet Beecher Stowe, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, Bessie Coleman, Frida Kahlo, Harriet Tubman, Sor Juana Inés de la Cruz, Myrtle Fillmore, Elizabeth Pierce Sand, the founder of this church, and Elizabeth Sand Turner, the first minister in this church, who said, no, that is not what God is. No, this is not going to happen anymore. No, I will offer a new and liberatory way to think and to be. Every act begins in sacred anger. And it's about protecting love, ultimately. I want y'all to download that right now. The anger ultimately in the boundary is about stepping into love in and of love, in and for myself or for others. So I ask you as I close, how will you begin using sacred anger as your power, freedom, and love call? How will you begin to set yourselves free, like Jesus said? Gloria Steinem, trailblazing feminist, acclaimed journalist, and one of the most visible, passionate leaders and spokeswomen of modern women's rights, said, like Jesus, the truth will set you free. But she said, the truth will set you free, but first it will piss you off. So my people, right? We must get angry. We must get pissed off. We must get uncomfortable. We must connect to that divine discontent, that holy rage. And as we do that, we move into this space of love, of being fully in love, of love, as love. And where we remember in this moment that we are powerful, that we are extraordinary. You each are powerful and extraordinary. Don't forget that. Connect to that, remember that, and allow yourself to be angry about the messages that have told you otherwise. You must love louder. You must love louder. You must love louder. And so it is. Amen.